Sometimes this time of year, it can feel a little gloomy, especially after the holiday rush. Even those of us who embrace the chilly weather sometimes need something to break up a long winter. And one thing I love to do every once in a while is treat myself to a little something special. I don't want to spend a fortune on it, and that's where Quince comes in. With Quince, you can treat yourself to everyday luxury at an affordable price. Something everyone needs in their closet, in my opinion, is Quince's iconic Mongolian cashmere sweater, starting at just $50. You can also check out their Italian leather handbags, washable silk skirts, and European linen sheet sets. Whatever you're looking for, all Quince items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands. And of course, they use premium fabrics and finishes for that luxury feel in every piece. I paired my new black Quince cashmere sweater with one of their silk skirts for the holidays, and I got so many compliments. I felt great. Treat yourself this winter without the luxury price tag. Go to quince.com/bestofyou for 365-day returns plus free shipping on your order. That's quince.com/bestofyou to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/bestofyou. This new year, take charge of your health with Organifi Green Juice. If you're anything like me, you could use more energy in your day, and it's so helpful to find simple, effective ways to replenish our bodies in the ways that they need. It turns out that two main factors in low energy are chronic stress and a lack of nutrition. Organifi creates delicious superfood blends that address both of these problems. One of my favorites is Organifi Green Juice. It includes essential superfoods and a clinical dose of ashwagandha that helps to reduce stress and support healthy cortisol levels. It's incredibly easy to use. You simply mix it with water or your favorite beverage while on the go, and it tastes fantastic. I love it in the morning before I head out for my day. Organifi takes pride in offering the best tasting superfood products on the market at a price that works out to less than $3 a day. You can experience Organifi's high quality superfoods without breaking the bank. Head over to www.organifi.com/bestofyou and use code bestofyou for 20% off your entire order. That's ORGANIFI.com/bestofyou. Hey everyone, I'm Dr. Allison, and I'm so glad you're here to discover what brings out the best of you. This podcast is all about breaking free from painful patterns, mending the past, and discovering our true selves in God. I can't wait to get started as we learn together how to become the best version of who we are with God's help. Hey everyone, and welcome back to this week's episode of the Best of You podcast. I am so glad to be here with you this week. It's just me this week. It's just me. And I had a topic that I've just been working on a lot in my own life. I've been having a lot of conversations about this with other people, and I wanted to bring it to the podcast. The topic is overfunctioning, and it's incredibly relevant for so many of us, especially here in these few weeks after the holidays. Most of us have been doing this for most of the last few weeks, if not the last few months. Overfunctioning is when you take on more than your actual share of responsibilities. And we often are doing this to manage our own anxiety or fears or insecurities. And I've just had so many conversations about this with other people, with friends, with clients, with family members, in addition to so many conversations with myself about these patterns. I've been working really hard on a lot of these patterns, especially this past year as I've gone through some transitional seasons. So it's very fresh for me personally. And I want to talk about today why it's so prevalent for us to find ourselves in this cycle of overfunctioning. And I also want to explore 3 very practical ways to begin to heal as we head into the new year and we want to become the best version of ourselves. Here's the thing about overfunctioning. It's not just that we work too hard or we get caught up in the moment. It's a way that parts of us have learned to survive. It's when we're managing other people's emotions or behaviors, or we're managing their problems instead of primarily doing the work of managing ourselves, of attuning to our own emotions, our own behaviors, our own problems, which is our primary responsibility in this life before God and before other people. A part of us has learned to focus all that attention outward onto other people. It's often linked to codependency when we are so focused on managing other people's problems that we miss out on the more important work that God is inviting us to do inside our own selves. This pattern of overfunctioning manifests in several different ways. It can show up as compulsive people pleasing, where we try to please others at the expense of staying true to ourselves. It can show up as compulsive peacekeeping, where we're constantly trying to manage other people's conflict with other people that has nothing to do with us, instead of regulating our own anxiety in the face of that conflict. It can show up as compulsive perfectionism, where we're working so hard to earn the approval of others through our own performance instead of attuning to our own needs, our own values, and our own worth. For example, you might find yourself managing your own anxiety by constantly rushing in to solve your friends' problems before they've even asked for help. In many cases, you might catch yourself frantically cleaning up your kids' rooms or cleaning up their homework, taking on tasks that they are fully capable of handling themselves because it's easier and quicker and more instantly gratifying than working through your own fears or your own stress. Maybe you're someone who, when your mom and your dad start to bicker with each other, or maybe your spouse and one of your children starts to argue, maybe you're someone who jumps in and constantly tries to interpret their words or reframe what they're saying. What he really means is this. You expend all this effort trying to smooth things over to prevent their conflict from escalating instead of stepping back and letting them address and resolve their own differences. We all find ourselves doing these things in some ways, but when it becomes compulsive, when we're doing it mindlessly, almost outside of our conscious awareness, when we're just so reflexively jumping in to keep the peace, to please, or to perfect, instead of hanging on to ourselves and attuning to our own internal responses, it becomes a problem. We are managing other people instead of doing the work of attending to and managing and leading ourselves through our own uncomfortable emotions. And so now listen, one way to ask yourself, is this a problem? Is this something I'm doing compulsively? Or is this just something that every once in a while I'm impatient and I jump in to try to fix a problem that wasn't really mine to fix, right? Is this a problem that I have? Is to ask yourself this, for the most part, am I acting from a place of calm and regulation, or am I engaging in this behavior to avoid, to escape, or to deny, or to bypass my own uncomfortable feelings? Am I jumping in to please this other person out of a conscious desire to be kind and compassionate in this moment? Or am I just behaving reflexively? This is just the only way I know. It's just what comes out of my mouth is what I know they want to hear. And I wouldn't even know how to show up with this person from a self-regulated space where I might say the kind thing that they want to hear from me in the moment. But I'm also free to say, gosh, I'm not sure I see it the same way you do. Or am I jumping in to pick up after my child or clean up their mess, whether it's a relational mess or whether it's a literal mess? Am I doing that out of a conscious desire to help them because they're in a bad spot? Or am I jumping in because I can't stand the discomfort that I feel seeing their room or seeing their relationships or seeing their homework in this state? Am I jumping into the middle of this conflict that these two other people have with each other because I've really thought about it and prayed about it, and I'm deeply aware that I have some tools that might help them, and they seem open to that, and I'm willing to step in as an objective third party to empower them to make a change? Or am I just jumping in reflexively in this moment because I cannot stand how I feel when other people are in conflict? How you answer those questions is crucial to understanding whether you're genuinely helping someone out of an overflow of your own heart, or if you're unknowingly perpetuating a cycle of codependency. This is a journey that I've been on personally for years. And while I have healed in many ways, I'm telling you, different life seasons resurrect old wounds in new ways. I turned 50 2 years ago. I'm, for the most part, now in empty nest. There are different factors and variables in my life right now that create new opportunities for deeper healing. And as I've reflected on my own journey this past year, as I've really been working through a lot of these dynamics in my own soul, I have noticed how often messages like the following rise up in my soul. I only know how to feel love through comforting others. That rings true for me a lot of the time when I'm aware I'm reaching to meet a need to feel loved and to feel comforted or to feel encouraged or to feel consoled in my own life through providing those very same things to someone else. It's as if a part of me projects my own emotional needs onto others. And then I work to care for those imagined needs in others instead of first pausing to ask myself, wait a minute, is it that other person that needs my caregiving right now, or is it a part of myself? And increasingly, I am aware that so often that part of me that is constantly showing me all this concern that it has for others around me is actually a cue that there's a part of me in need of my care. And so as I've unpacked this in my own life and helped others to unpack it in theirs, there's a concept that I think is often at the root of this kind of compulsive overfunctioning, where we constantly work to manage other people instead of doing the work of managing and caring for the parts of ourselves. And the word is parentification. This is when you've been conditioned since childhood to take care of other people. I talk about this in my book, The Best of You, Break Free from Painful Patterns, Mend Your Past, and Discover Your True Self in God. The whole book really is about healing from this specific pattern of overfunctioning on behalf of others to the neglect of your own self. But one of the stories that didn't make it into the final cut of the book was about a client, Emily. I've changed her name to protect her identity, but she grew up in a home where her mother often turned to her as a confidant. And as early as the age of 8, she would remember sitting at the kitchen table where she would listen to her mom vent about her friends or her work or even about Emily's father. And Emily would just listen and really try to help her mom. And here's the memory that Emily would constantly go back to as we unpacked this, is her mom would end these conversations by saying, "You are such a good listener, Emily. I don't know what I'd do without you." And think about the impact of those words on a young child's soul. You are such a good listener. I don't know what I'd do without you, right? Emily took that in at a young age, and she began to become a master at reading other people's emotions. She began to detect before her mom would even say anything to her when she needed help cleaning up or when her mom needed space and Emily would just tiptoe away and stay out of her hair, or when her mom needed just the right words of comfort. Emily became a master at reading those cues externally and then getting that hit of dopamine, that hit. It felt so good when her mom would say, "You're so amazing, Emily. I don't know what I would do without you," right? A young part of Emily picked up the idea that she could get a hit of love or affection through taking care of somebody else. The problem is that as an adult, Emily began to notice that she often felt invisible in her relationships. She was really good at showing up for other people in her life. She showed up for her friends. She showed up for her kids. She showed up for her spouse. She showed up for her colleagues. But she just had this chronic, lingering loneliness inside. Like, nobody sees me. Nobody knows me. I have all these friends. I have all these people in my life who turn to me, but why do I feel so alone? And as we began to unpack Emily's past, this term, parentification, became a really helpful naming that began to set her on a path toward healing. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. What do you want your 2025 story to be? Life isn't about resolutions that fade by February. It's about picking up the pen and becoming the author of your own life. Think of therapy as your editorial partner, helping you write new chapters and create the meaningful story you deserve to live. I've benefited so much from therapy this past year as I've been through a transitional season, not only looking at the past, but mostly helping me shape how I want my future to be. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's fully online, making it affordable and convenient. It serves over 5 million people worldwide, and you can access a diverse network of more than 30,000 credentialed therapists with a wide range of specialties. And you can switch therapists anytime at no additional cost. Write your story with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/bestofyou today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/best.
Oh, it's such a clutch off-season pickup, Dave.
I was worried we'd bring back the same team.
I meant those blackout motorized shades.
Blinds.com made it crazy affordable to replace our old blinds.
Hard to install?
No, it's easy. I installed these and then got some for my mom. She talked to a design consultant for free and scheduled a professional measure and install.
Hall of Fame son.
They're the #1 online retailer of custom window coverings in the world.
Blinds.com is the GOAT.
Go to Blinds.com for 40% off site-wide. Blinds.com. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Of you. Parentification is a role reversal in which a child steps into a caregiving role for their parent. And in this case, I'm speaking primarily about emotional support. When a child is expected to meet the emotional needs for their parent, it might look like being a confidant, a pseudo-therapist, or even a mediator between a parent and another parent, or between a parent and your siblings. Now listen, this isn't about the occasional moment when a child helps a parent out. Those can be healthy and character building and really beautiful. You know, when our child shows us a moment of empathy or compassion, we want to honor that in our child. But this is a really different thing. This is a chronic pattern where the child's role in the family is distorted, where they are conditioned to become essentially the primary caregiver, the parent in the family. And in this sense, the parent really abdicates their role as the primary caregiver when it comes to emotional care. In particular, it can happen in other ways, but we're going to talk about the emotional piece of it in today's episode, where the parent is supposed to be providing the guidance, the wisdom, the support. But instead of doing that, they're instead receiving the care and guidance and support from their child. And this role reversal really disrupts your development when you're a child. It affects your emotional and psychological health. Here's the thing that is so important to understand. There is a power differential in a family. At its core, parentification distorts the natural power differential within a family. Adults hold the greater power, emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually. Children, on the other hand, are vulnerable. A child's job is to rely on their caregivers to help them learn to regulate their own emotions, to process complicated situations, and to set healthy boundaries with their own peers and even with their own family members. There are tasks children are simply not equipped to handle on their own, and the parent needs to be the primary caregiver in a family so that a child knows what it feels like to receive care, to receive guidance, to receive support. And this idea aligns beautifully with the biblical metaphor Jesus gives us for God as Father or Abba, which translates to a deeply intimate and nurturing primary caregiver. As humans, we look to God as bigger than us, as knowing more than us, and as the one who provides, protects, and guides us, right? It's just a beautiful relationship where we get to lean into God as that all-knowing, all-giving, all-supporting being when we're feeling vulnerable or scared or broken down. And in a family system, while parents never do this perfectly, ever will we do this perfectly, we are entrusted as parents to reflect this type of nurturing, Abba-like presence to our children. And while, of course, we do this imperfectly, we do carry the responsibility that we have to shape our children's lives, not the other way around. So if a parent subverts that natural power differential and begins to lean on the child, in a way exploiting the child's vulnerability, that family dynamic really shifts. Instead of being taught how to understand and regulate your emotions, you were leaned on as an emotional co-regulator for a parent or for a family member. Instead of helping you process your own struggles, your own fears, your own insecurities, your own sensitivities, whether at school with friends or in your own family, you were groomed to serve as your parents' personal sounding board. Instead of modeling healthy boundaries to protect emotional well-being and physical space, you were constantly boundary fouled. Your parent constantly overstepped the boundaries and placed inappropriate burdens on you. So if you go back to Emily's story, let's say she's listening really attentively to her mom, and her mom says to her in that moment, "Emily, you have such a kind heart. I love your empathy. I want you to know that these are my problems, and I have other adults to work through these problems with. These are not your responsibility. In fact, I want to be sure you're not feeling scared or anxious, because somehow you've picked up on the fact that I'm feeling scared or anxious. And I want you to know I'm okay. I'm getting the help I need. It's my job to be here for you. How are you doing in this moment?" A parent has the foresight to understand that when a child is over-functioning, stepping into a role of a parent or stepping into a role where they're taking on more responsibility than is theirs to take on, it's a parent's job to point that out. This actually isn't your responsibility to step in here. So tell me a little bit about what that's about. What's going on inside of you? That's what a parent needs to do. So as you can imagine, if that didn't happen for you as an adult, you're going to show some symptoms of that, because not only were you stepping into overfunctioning through caring for your own parent, but you were being validated for it. You were being told, "Oh, I love this about you. I couldn't live without you." And so you take that with you into adulthood. Here are 5 indicators that you may have been parentified as you struggle not to overfunction in your adult relationships. Number 1, you struggle to identify your own needs. A part of you finds it easier to focus on others than to connect with your own feelings, desires, or needs. And this part often measures your self-worth based on your ability to satisfy the needs of others. Number 2, you feel responsible for other people's emotions. A part of you is hyper attuned to the emotions of those around you. You feel responsible for their well-being, and this part of you feels guilty, as if it's your fault when others are upset, angry, disappointed, down, even when it has nothing to do with you. Number 3, you avoid conflict. A part of you tends to avoid conflict. That part of you cannot stand the thought of someone else feeling uncomfortable as a result of your actions, even if they should feel uncomfortable as a result of your actions, right? Because they're actually doing something that is wrong, and you need to speak up and say, "Hey, I'm not comfortable with this." And that's going to evoke discomfort in them. And this part of you cannot stand that. It feels like anathema to you. And instead, you sacrifice your own needs in the relationship so that they always feel good about themselves and never have to feel the pain of conflict. And conflict is healthy in relationships. We need to be able to enter into conflict to navigate through pain points in our relationships. Number 4, you experience a kind of hypervigilance where you're always on duty. You're always on watch. I experience this as sort of like an antenna part of me that's just always out ahead of me, gauging what's happening in other people, gauging other people's facial expressions, gauging other people's subtext, gauging other people's moods. It's constantly scanning for what others need, for what others are worrying about, for what others' expectations are in the moment, and feeding that information to me so that I can meet it often before they even ask. And I'll be honest with you, this vigilant part of me is often driven by, number one, either a fear of abandonment, that if I don't anticipate and meet that need, I won't be in relationship with that person anymore, right? I'll be cut off from that person. It's the only way that part of me knows how to experience connection. Or number two, that part of me genuinely and sincerely believes that that other person can't manage without my help. And that's been a big one to unpack in my own life. That what if there are other ways to experience healthy two-way connection? And what if that other person, in fact, not only can, but needs to learn to manage without my help? Are you tired of searching for a skincare product that actually delivers on its promises? I've been there, trying product after product labeled as clean or non-toxic, only to find hidden ingredients or zero results. That's why I'm thrilled to share Purity Woods with you. Their mission is simple: to provide the cleanest and most effective healthy aging products on the market. Their products are USDA certified organic, non-GMO, free of artificial additives, parabens, and toxic preservatives, and they're completely cruelty-free. Their age-defying Dream Cream is a game changer. With revolutionary maple leaf extract and over 25 potent ingredients, it helps reduce fine lines, wrinkles, and age spots while supporting collagen and elastin production, all without irritation or drying. Turn back time on the appearance of your skin with Purity Woods Age-Defying Dream Cream. Right now, Purity Woods is offering 17% off site-wide, and we have an exclusive additional 10% discount for our listeners. That's a total savings of 27%. Go to puritywoods.com/bestofyou or enter code bestofyou at checkout for an additional 10% off your first order. That's puritywoods.com and enter code bestofyou for a total of 27% off your first order.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon. Sometimes the most painful part of getting sick is the getting better part. Waiting on hold for an appointment, sitting in crowded waiting rooms, standing in line at the pharmacy, that's painful. Amazon One Medical and Amazon Pharmacy remove those painful parts of getting better with things like 24/7 virtual visits and prescriptions delivered to your door. Thanks to Amazon Pharmacy and Amazon One Medical, healthcare just got less painful.
And then the fifth indicator that you have developed this pattern of overfunctioning is that you have a lot of difficulty trusting others. A part of you, having been relied upon so heavily as a child, struggles to trust that someone else could actually show up for you when you need support or when you need a listening ear. And as a result, this part of you makes it hard for you to form balanced relationships where your needs are acknowledged just as often and just as frequently as you're acknowledging the needs of the other person. If you notice any of these 5 indicators in your life, please know this is not your fault. This is a pattern that develops usually early in childhood and often as a result of this kind of parentification. And it often begins with parents who are struggling in their own ways. So there's no blame here, but we do need to name it. I have been overfunctioning since I was 8 years old. It's not going to just change on a dime. There's a pattern here that I need to heal. And here is the good news. Healing is possible. It's the work we're invited into. It's the path that God invites each and every one of us on. Naming is just the marker at the beginning of the path. Oh, this is where I am. I'm an overfunctioner. I tend to overfunction. I have codependent patterns. I have no clue how to honor my own needs. This is good news. This is the truth that sets us free. And we set down on the path of healing where God becomes the most wonderful sort of companion as we work to establish new ways. The first of 3 steps to healing I want to share with you today is that naming it. Name the pattern. Not only that you do it in general, but begin to name it in the moment. Oh my goodness, I'm pleasing this person right now. I can't stop in this moment, but I'm aware I'm doing it. My reflex right now is just to say whatever they want me to hear. Just that awareness in and of itself is a huge step toward change. Or you might name it after the fact. Oh my gosh, my spouse and my eldest son were just in a conflict and I could not stop myself from intervening, from getting in the middle of it. And it happened. But that noticing, again, is what allows you to begin to blaze new neural pathways in your brain. It's going to take a few of those where you notice it while it's happening, you notice it after it's happening, until you finally get to the point of realizing it before it happens and making a different choice. When we can notice and name what's happening without shame, we get some distance from it. And we begin to ask ourselves, what would it look like in that moment if I did make a different choice? What would it look like if when I felt that anxiety inside of me when two people in front of me are starting to fight, if I got up and excused myself and left the room? Could I really do that? It really starts with that internal what ifing. What if I could make a different choice? And this leads us to number 2, where you reconnect to the part of yourself that has learned this strategy to survive. Oh my gosh, right now, a part of me is scanning this Christmas dinner table, noticing which person is about ready to get angry or which person is about ready to feel hurt. And you, instead of focusing on the other person or on the other people, shift your attention to the part of you that's doing the scanning. I wonder what that's about. What is that part of me that is so invested in taking the temperature of everyone in the room? What does that part of me need from me right now? What fears does this part of me have if it weren't to do this job? What if I were to stop scanning everybody else and notice what I'm feeling in this moment? And inevitably, when I start doing this work, when I slowly notice that part of me that's so tempted to read everybody else, and I begin to attune to my own inner feelings, inevitably, I notice anxiety. I feel anxious right now. I don't like conflict. I want everyone to feel happy. And I begin to do the work of reparenting the parts of myself in need of care. And I let that part of me know it doesn't have to work so hard anymore. And I play the role of the parent for that part of me, because that part of me is young. It's back in that 8-year-old self, thinking its job is to scan the needs of everybody else. And I let that part of me know, thank you so much for working so hard, but you don't have to do that job anymore. I'm here. I can handle it. You can rest inside my own soul. And you begin to parent that part of you in a way that it never got parented. And then lastly, number 3, as you begin to notice more of your own internal anxieties and fears that lead to the overfunctioning, and you begin to reorient to your own needs instead, then you can begin to set healthy boundaries with your impulse to overfunction. Now notice, I didn't say set healthy boundaries with other people. I said set healthy boundaries with your own impulse to overfunction. And here's why that's important to me. Part of why I wrote The Best of You is because I was concerned that most of the conversation about boundaries is written through the lens of saying no to other people, which, if you think about it from this overfunctioning lens, can easily become about managing other people. Well, I just need to say no to other people because then they'll stop doing this thing. The focus is on other people, and that isn't helpful to those of us who overfunction by managing other people. Instead, think about boundaries as figuring out what you want to say yes to inside your own self. So, for example, I don't like family conflict. I feel anxious. Instead of managing others, what other choice do I wish to make in this moment? Do I wish to excuse myself from the room? Do I wish to leave? Do I wish to limit the time that I'm present at these types of gatherings, right? You flip it to not what I'm going to say no to with other people, but what do I want instead? What would I do if it wasn't my job to intervene in this conflict that someone else is having? What would I do instead? What would I do with my time if I wasn't compulsively fixing other people's problems? What would I want to do in this moment if I wasn't cleaning up other people's messes? And let yourself wonder. It might take a while to answer those questions. This is the harder part of the equation. What would I do instead right now if I didn't race in to clean up that mess that someone else made? And one of the tools that I have found recently that's been really helpful for me on this boundary setting journey is by Mel Robbins. And she's got a new book out. It's called The Let Them Theory. It's everywhere. I highly recommend it. I would love to get Mel on the podcast. She's super busy, understandably. So I'm going to just briefly use her words, but go check out her book to get the full deep dive on it. She uses these 2 steps. And so in the context of overfunctioning, right? The first part of it is let them have their mess. Let them have their disappointment. Let them have their emotions. Let them engage in that conflict. That's not in my control. That's not mine to manage, right? That's the first part of this, is just recognizing that. That's not mine to manage. But the second part of her theory, and this part is a lot harder, and it gets at boundaries work, is let me. It's what can I control? What can I manage? What I can manage is myself. Let me. And so I'm going to let them have their reaction in this moment, have their conflict in this moment. But then I'm going to let me choose to remove myself. I'm going to let them work through their own problem that they created. And then I'm going to take a deep breath and I'm going to give myself permission to do something really nice for myself, because it's really hard for me to watch someone else suffer the consequences of their own actions, right? And so that second part, what she calls let me, gets at this proactive side of boundary setting. It gets at this way in which we have to go, what do I need to do in this situation to take care of myself, to manage myself, to regulate myself? And this is a tool that honors our own agency. We let other people be responsible for themselves. And that allows us to take responsibility for what's ours, for our own anxiety. What actually helps me when I feel anxious? What soothes me when I'm fearful? What makes me feel supported or connected or cared for? And man, that is next level healing, when we actually finally start to tap into what we need from other people, what we need from God, what we need from our family members, from our friends, to thrive and feel supported and loved. When you shift away from managing other people to leading and nurturing and caring for and reparenting the parts of your own soul in partnership with God's Spirit, you create an oasis of goodness and kindness and calm inside your own soul. And from this place of taking charge of your own self, you can begin to empower others in their own healing journeys. Thank you for joining me for this week's episode of The Best of You. It would mean so much if you take a moment to subscribe. You can go to Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, or wherever you listen to podcasts and click the plus or follow button. That will ensure you don't miss an episode, and it helps get the word out to others. While you're there, I'd love it if you leave your 5-star review. I look forward to seeing you back here next Thursday. And remember, as you become the best of who you are, you honor God, you heal others, and you stay true to your God-given self.